All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends who love a chronic Lyme survivor need to know. You can find that up on Amazon. Olivia, I give away the PDF of that book for free to Lyme survivors. I've given it out to over 2,000 Lyme survivors around the globe. If you'd like a free copy, the e-version, the PDF of Love, Hope, Lyme, reach out to me via Facebook. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I get a lot of people, Olivia, who reach out to me on LinkedIn. Either way, I'll get that copy to you. If you want signed copies, reach out to me either via Facebook or LinkedIn. Olivia, I've had people who've ordered dozens of copies and have sent them to their family and friends, and I'd be happy to sign them off for you. Our show is available on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment. We would greatly appreciate it. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much as well. Feel free to go up, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that as well. So in the summer of 2021, when Olivia, I began my research on Lyme disease to understand how chronic Lyme disease affected someone in my life, I met so many amazing people who have created mission-driven organizations to help Lyme survivors across the globe, to help them find treatment, cures, support, hope, whatever it might be. And one of the people that I discovered, and I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today, is Olivia Goodreau. She's with the LivLyme Foundation. Now, Olivia, many people might be aware of you. You know, you wrote a book. You know, you created an organization that has done so many great things. And, you know, your story is quite remarkable in a couple different ways. You got Lyme when you were 12 years old. You went through an unbelievable journey to get to a good place with the Lyme disease. And then you created a foundation. You wrote a book. You're a huge global advocate. You've given people so much hope. I don't want to tell your story. I want you to tell your story. But for people who don't know about you, give us a little bit of your journey. Again, it was when you were a child. You know, you were diagnosed with Lyme. Took you 54 doctors to get there. Why don't you tell us a story? Give us an update on your Lyme journey. Then we'll talk about why and how you created the LivLyme Foundation and what it does. Then we'll talk about your books, and then we'll talk about some of the apps that you've created as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me on here. So, when I was 7 years old, I was at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, and that's where we think I was bitten by the tick because ticks are everywhere. And I didn't go into the woods in general because there's poison ivy and snakes, but I was in the driveway, I was catching fireflies. So, probably that's the time that I got bitten by the tick. And over the course of 2 weeks or so, I started developing those symptoms after I returned from Missouri to Denver. And we didn't really know what was going on because I was entering my second grade year. So my teachers at first thought that, maybe I had a learning disability, maybe second grade was just really hard, maybe I was just really, really tired at the end of the day. And then things got a lot worse when, I started presenting flu-like symptoms that wouldn't go away. And even when I started passing out and losing my vision. And that's when my parents knew that they had to take me to the hospital and figure out what was wrong. However, it did take 18 months and 51 doctors at the time to just be diagnosed with Lyme disease at all. I was misdiagnosed from everything between late stage autism to types of cancer to Wilson's disease, to where I was told that I was going to be dead earlier than the kids next to me in my grade at, the age of 8. And I was mortified to hear that. And then when they couldn't figure out what was wrong, after, of course, they said, oh, you need to drink more water. You're in Denver. It's a high altitude city. They finally said, you have Munchausen syndrome because
Mm.
they didn't know what was wrong with me. So they thought that I was faking it. Finally, my 51st doctor took the time to look at what the other doctors had missed and what the other doctors didn't test. And she noticed some similarities between myself and one of her other patients from a while back. So she did the Lyme disease test on me, and I was completely off the charts. And I went on 30 days of doxycycline and told that I was going to be back to normal entirely and that, everything was solved. Well, as most of you know who have Lyme disease out there, that was not the case at all. 30 days I felt okay, but then after that, nosedived again. I felt awful. And so it took another 3 years and four more doctors to figure out that I had other co-infections, including Bartonella, Babesia, POTS syndrome, relapsing fever, and an anti-1 trypsin deficiency in my liver. And I was put on 86 pills a day to deal with this. So I was taking 60, what, 43 pills in the morning, 43 pills at night. And I was also going to school as well. And I didn't meet Dr. Horowitz, who I think completely saved my life until I was 12 years old. And he was the one who figured out that I had all these co-infections. He was the one who put me on all of these pills. However, they worked and they made me feel, out of 100%, 70%. And I felt incredible going from, 30% to 70%. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best I will ever be. And I'm sure we will talk about it later, but I recently went into remission because one of his treatments I did last year, my senior year in high school, and it was really brutal. It was 46 pills a day over the course of 9 weeks. However, after that, I was completely in remission and I have never felt this amazing.
I have a question for you. So that's great. So when you're seeing all these doctors in Denver, we all know the myths of quote unquote Lyme is not here. People who aren't in, or people in various places will always hear. We hear that all the time. Did any of the doctors? I know you were young, but do you recall if any of the doctors asked if you went to the Ozarks? And the thing that triggered me about the Ozarks is I've met so many people in Texas and through the Midwest. Many of them believe that they got bitten in the Ozarks, and it's a beautiful area. I've been there as well. But did a doctor ever say to you or to your parents, has she been elsewhere in other parts of the country? Do you remember any of that at all?
Honestly, no, I don't. I feel
Hmm.
like I completely missed that opportunity in that window. They never asked at all. And I feel like had they asked, they might have done more tests because, the whole stigma and misinformation out there is that Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses are just East Coast problem. And so what many people might not know is that Lyme disease and tick-borne diseases are all around the world, everywhere. There are a variety of tick-borne disease in the United States alone, and Lyme disease has even been found on penguins. And
Yeah.
so they are on all continents everywhere. So I think had they asked if I had been out of state, I think probably it wouldn't have taken 51 doctors for my diagnosis.
No, that's incredible. I mean, uh, we talk a lot about the documentary, The Quiet Epidemic, and I know you've done some work with Dr. Spector, may he rest in peace. But in the very opening part of The Quiet Epidemic, they show ticks on birds, being found all over the country. And when I published my book, one of the things I was shocked to find out was that the first place where my book was reviewed was in Australia. And we all know what's going on. Well, not we all know, but there's a lot of crimes against humanity happening in Australia. I've interviewed doctors in Poland. I've made friends all across the country, and it's one of the big things that we've learned over the last couple of years is doctors aren't always asking the right questions. And you go to a doctor and they'll diagnose you for what they know, but it's just incredible. Had they asked, tell us about some of your travel that you've done and where have you been, a smart doctor might have put two and two together. So you said when you were 12 you created the LivLyme Foundation. So talk about that. Talk about what led to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm 12 years old. I just realized that I don't have one disease, I have six. And I am freaking out. I'm going into middle school really, and I am so concerned. I was thinking that I wasn't going to be able to continue middle school. I thought that, this was the end of my academia. Like I was done. And a lot of kids with tick-borne illnesses, they are well enough to go to school. So that's what I was thinking. And the only reason why I knew that was actually because I had taken my mom's phone and I looked up on Facebook about Lyme disease. And I was doing my own research to, see what other people were dealing with. Were other people getting better? Were they worse? And I had come across a story about a mom and her son, and they were living in their car so they could afford the boys' Lyme disease medication. And out of all the stories that I had read about, what everyone is dealing with, that one story really stuck with me, and it really hit me hard because I realized that almost all of the medication for tick-borne illnesses is not covered by insurance companies. And it is extremely difficult for patients to, get affordable medication that actually works. And thankfully enough, my parents are able to afford a lot of that medication, but there are a lot of people out there in the United States who do not have that ability to afford their medication. So I created the nonprofit to help kids afford their Lyme disease and other tick-borne illness medication. And on the other end, I also provide funding for scientists, research institutions, and universities for hopefully better treatments, better testings, more affordable testings and treatments, and hopefully in the future, a cure, something that we can give everyone and say, if you take this, you will be okay.
That's remarkable. So, what is it about you? Why do you think you were the one who created this? Right? Because we've interviewed people on the podcast. I interviewed Bonnie Crater from the Center for Lyme Action, and they created an entity that lobbies Capitol Hill to get federal funding for Lyme disease treatment and advocacy and a whole slew of things. And I remember at the very end of the show, I was so touched by what they did. I just said, just do something. People, if you're listening to the show, do something, do anything, be a better human. What is it about you? Why do you think that this triggered you? Is it watching your parents? Were they active in social causes? Do you have grandparents who were involved? What is it that spurred 12-year-old Olivia Goodreau to create something that's so remarkable and powerful?
Well, my parents and my grandparents, I feel like I come from a family that is so generous and incredible, and I have always been invested in the world of nonprofit profits. My grandmother had one, my parents helped with those as well. So, when I was little, I would help for Dolls for Daughters,
Hmm.
and I would, go with my dad and help out with that. So I've never been, not exposed to things like that, which I think had a great impact on who I am today. And I really, really appreciate that. And I hope that, more kids out there, I feel like nonprofit work and being exposed to, the art of giving and generosity, it is absolutely incredible. So I knew what a nonprofit was at that time, which I think, as a 12-year-old, you might not necessarily know exactly what it was, but because my past experience, I did know what it was. And for me, it was less intimidating. I had seen my parents do that. I had seen my grandmother do that. I, had a lot of experience with people that I looked up to, having that to do. And that was, their passion. And so when I told my mom, I was like, I want to start a nonprofit. And at the time, she had just finished, putting on this event for another nonprofit. And she was like, I'm done. Like, that was great. I have, completed that whole nonprofit. It was so great and amazing. I think I'm done. And I came up to her the next day and I was like, hey, actually, you're not. I'm going to start a nonprofit. And, she's been my number one supporter ever since. And so it's been great. But yes, I think that, having that experience from especially people that I love, that really, really influenced me and gave me the courage to, do something like this. And on the other end, I feel like not a lot of things were happening. And I know that there are tons of incredible nonprofits out there and there are tons of research going on. But at the time when I was 12 years old, I was looking up things and it was honestly pretty stagnant in my opinion. And again, I was 12 years old, so maybe I wasn't looking at the right areas. But I realized that, if no one's going to do anything and if I have to wait on someone, I don't want to wait on someone. I don't want to wait for someone to make things better. And so one of my friends, retired Colonel Nicole Malachowski, she was the first female Thunderbird pilot. She's one of my dearest friends, and she's also a Lyme activist. She says that we are recruited by ticks, and I completely believe that.
So Nicole was on the Love Hope Line podcast as well, and she is a remarkable person. I had the opportunity. I interviewed her a while ago, and she was just absolutely fantastic. I had the opportunity to see her in person speak. There was a Center for Lyme Action event. Again, we're doing today's interview with Olivia Goodreau in July of the summer of 2024. This was in June, about a month or so ago, on Capitol Hill, and I know I've spoken to over to thousands of Lyme survivors, and how you're presenting yourself right now and how she presented her story was just absolutely phenomenal. and remarkable. She is an amazing American and an amazing human being as well. I want to ask you another question about the creation of the foundation. This is just going to be a joke. When I was 12, I was watching cartoons and eating cereal. And here you are creating a foundation that has helped, and will continue to help thousands. And you've put on galas, and you've done events, and you wrote a book, which we'll get to in a second. Talk about how you enlisted people, right? It's a little bit easier now, but how did you enlist? You talked about how you got your mother involved, but how did you enlist your friends? How did you enlist Nicole Malachowski? How did you enlist Dr. Spector? Talk about what did you do physically? So the people watching as well, one of the things that struck me, Olivia, is when I began to understand what this whole world is about. I run as a business an organization for sales leaders, people who run big sales organizations at companies like Amazon, Salesforce, Oracle, Hilton. And being successful in business sales is about getting past obstacles. Customers don't return your phone calls, et cetera. Well, getting past Lyme disease and then having a fully functioning, amazing life is a challenge for a lot of people, as we know. So I started doing interviews with people who have Lyme, who've gotten over the hump, if you will, and have created 501c3s or have had great sales careers. And there's a number of them, like you said, some remarkable people. So talk a little bit about how you enlisted, so the people listening to today's podcast or watching us on YouTube know what it took, right? It's not just like, hey, mom, I want to create something, boom, and the next thing you know, you have a gala, with 1,000 people, or however many people you had. Talk a little bit about the work that went into this as well.
Well, it's actually really funny. But okay, to paint the picture for you, I had just met my Lyme disease doctor, Dr. Horowitz, for the very first time. And he had a 10-year waiting list. He was super busy. And the only reason why I had met him was because he was coming to Denver for a conference.
Hmm.
And my mom, who is incredible, absolutely incredible, she had called the office and she said, hey, not to sound like a crazy Lyme disease person, but if Dr. Horowitz needs a chauffeur or needs someone to drive him from the airport to this conference center, I am happy to go and do that. So that happened, and she was able to drive him to the conference center, which is incredible. And that's, I think, the reason why he is my doctor and why I'm in remission, is because she made that phone call and said, hey, can I help out? And they had gotten there. She had all my medical records in the backseat just in case he was dead. And my medical records were like this high, like so high, so much. And he did ask, he was like, oh, I heard that you had a daughter who had Lyme disease. Like, I would, love to take a look at her medical records. She was like, oh, convenient. I have them in my backseat. Isn't that great? So they had dinner and they talked. And next thing I know, I'm being invited to, go watch him present at this conference. And he's speaking, and I tell him a little bit about myself right before he speaks, and he is on the stage and he says, I would like to introduce my newest friend Olivia Goodreau to the stage to tell her story. So that was the very first time I ever publicly spoke at all. I was 12 years old, completely blindsided. I didn't know this was going to happen. So I walk up there and I'm terrified in front of hundreds of scientists and researchers and doctors, and I talk like I am right now. And I think that's been so helpful, is just to, treat those audience members like they're your friends, and that, they are there because they want to support you and because they want to listen to you. And if they didn't want to listen to you, they could just leave. And so that's what I always think, is like, they have, that patience and they want to hear what I have to say. So I'm just going to say it. So that happened. And then I was driving home and he was in the car with us and we were driving him back to the airport. And I said, I'm having a gala and I would like you to be the keynote speaker. I wasn't having a gala. It wasn't planned. It wasn't anything happening. I don't even think I had the nonprofit at that time. And I was like, oh, my nonprofit, the LivLyme Foundation, I'm going to have a gala. When are you free? He was like, I am free April 8th. And that's the only date that I can do it. I was like, great. The gala will be on April 8th. So I set a deadline for myself and my mom really clearly. Once he got out of the car, she turned to me and she was like, so, do you have, because I don't have a gala. And so we immediately got on that work. And to your question of, you know, recruiting people and, having people join the cause, I feel like the worst thing that can happen is them saying no. And knowing that, I asked everyone. I asked all my friends, my family, my teachers, and it was very interesting to see, there were people who totally wanted to join the cause. And there were some of my friends, and great, they were in middle school, so they probably were intimidated by, something that wasn't normal. But, they said, no, like you're weird. I don't want to do that. So that's what I've been doing this entire time is just asking. I'll send an email to, congressmen and women and senators, and I'll say, hey, I'm in town. I would love to talk to you about this issue if you have time. They all respond and they say, yes, we have, times here, here, and here. And I feel like a lot of people, they ask that question, well, how do you get into these places? Ask, send them an email, talk to them, have a phone call. If you meet them at an event, make sure to introduce yourself, make sure that, you remember each other. And that has never, gone wrong for me in any way. If they don't want to meet, they say, sorry, we don't have any openings. Great, I'll go to the next person. So the biggest advice for those out there is the worst thing that you can do is ask, and they say no. So that is how I've been recruiting everyone. I asked Nicole Malachowski, I've asked senators, I've asked mayors and governors. I have asked everyone, and sometimes it works, and on the occasional time it doesn't. But
Yeah. How many people did you have at the first gala?
oh gosh, it was a while ago. It was a very, very long time ago. I'm 19 now, so
Mhm.
7 years ago. I want to say it was very, very small. I want to say we had 200 to 300 people.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not very, very small, by the way. So that is quite remarkable. Let's talk about your book. So, okay, so you create a foundation and you also wrote a book, and we're going to get to your apps in a second or two as well. But the book is called But She Looks Fine: From Illness to Activism. So tell us about, why you decided to write the book and how it's available. I know it's, of course, on Amazon and all the usual places people buy books, but tell us what that's all about and where is that now, and whenever you write a book, people always want to ask the question, are you going to write another one? So give us a little bit of background on that and what you hope to achieve with the book, and what's up next.
yeah, absolutely. So as I'm, doing all these activist things, a lot of people are saying, "Oh my gosh, you should write a book." And I at the time laughed it off. I was like, "Oh, haha, yeah, yeah, maybe." And I, of course, was putting a lot of things, in this resume of mine to, I wanted people to know my story and how I got from, being so sick and missing weeks of school at second grade and being told that either I was going to die or I was making it up. And those were the only two options to, speaking at the White House. And I wanted people to understand that, things are possible if you have hope. And that was like the one thing that carried me. And I still have hope. I have hope that, there's going to be cures out there and there's going to be testing out there. That's why I still do what I do. It's why I'm here right now talking to you. And so writing my book, I was really influenced by my grandmother's best friend. So my like great godmother, best friend, they were practically sisters. Her name was Kathy, and she's absolutely amazing. And she had written a couple books too. And so she, came to me and she was like, Olivia, you really do need to write a book. And, I have these people that I've been working with that, would love your story. And so I'm going to give you their contact. And she then unfortunately passed away soon after that. And COVID happened and I was like, wow, like I should really write a book. I was like, I want people to, remember my story and look at that and say, I can do that too. So I started writing the book, and it was really hard because, I had to go back and almost relive everything that happened in order to write this book. And I had to relive what all those mean girls in middle school said to me, to where at the time it hurt so much. So I relived my entire story again, and I wrote the book and I had it out, and I, didn't want to tell anyone that I was writing a book just in case. And finally told people, and I got incredible feedback. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, like she's finally done it. She did. She's writing a book. Like, oh my gosh, this is great." And I wanted to make sure that, this book could be read by a 10-year-old. It could be read by a 50-year-old. I wanted to make sure that, the people who needed to read it could read it. And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is a great read. This is amazing. And, I get that from, again, 15, 6-year-olds. And then I also get that from 12-year-olds who also have chronic diseases. So that's been really incredible. And I actually was just in San Diego for I believe the National Librarians Association of America. I think that's what it's called. It might be switched around a bit. But they had a giant book conference and a book convention. So I was able to do a couple signings there as well. And so I've been doing a lot of book signings and a lot of amazing, presentations and talking to people around the world. And this is for the people that, are too sick to, come to my galas or, conferences or summits or, go where I'm going to be in DC. So those people that, are bedridden, if they want to hear my story, now they can. And again, it's out everywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, really anywhere that you can buy a book, it's probably there. So
I want to ask you a follow-up question. I've met a lot of mothers who have teenage daughters who've had Lyme disease, and it's a struggle because a lot of times, they're bedridden and you miss a year and you have to be homeschooled. You talked about some of the quote unquote mean girls. How were your friends to you in the midst of this? Did you have some friends who, it just wasn't an issue? It's like, okay, well, Olivia spends a lot of time in her room, or how did you feel? And talk about your friends. And the reason I'm asking you that question is, again, there's a lot of mothers with children, like I mentioned, and they're struggling to not just find the medical solutions like you talked about, but also they want their children to have a wonderful life, right? And they want their children to do things like they did as children that most children do.
yeah, absolutely. So I in middle school when I, was coming in and I was super sick and I was on 86 pills a day. I was pale as a ghost. I was not doing well. And I think this actually probably started, the worst part was in fourth grade because I was in the same like homeroom as this girl and she just hated my guts. Oh my gosh. Like I don't even know, like I don't know if I did something to like offend her, but like I was her number one target. And I mean, yeah, I'm the, sick kid in the corner, like, sure, all right. But yeah, she would tell people that, while I was at the hospital or something like that, that I was really in Italy on vacation or in Mexico or somewhere fun, or I'm going to Disneyland while I'm, getting like a million transfusions and I'm sick and, feeling like I'm on my deathbed. And she would try to, and she told me this word for word, she would try to steal my friends.
Hmm.
So while I was sick, she would hang out with all my friends and, probably talk all the mean things about me. And at sometimes it worked. And I did lose a couple friends because of that. But at other times I didn't. And they held fast and they were really, really supportive. So when I told them that, I had all these illnesses, it was very interesting to see those friends that stuck around and those friends that didn't because it was different and it was maybe scary because they didn't know what it was. And for the parents out there who might not have a kid with Lyme disease, I pray to God that your kids will be those kids that stick around for, the one who's sick, the one who doesn't know what's going on, and is having a hard time. And those people who stuck around for me, I'm still friends with them today. I mean, they're so incredible and so kind to me. And in middle school, this is all kind of happening. And, every now and then, someone make a jab at me and I'd be like, yeah, well, I'm sick. I don't know what you want me to tell. Sorry. Like I
Yeah.
can show you my like IV line little prick dots on my arm if that makes you feel better. Um, and I, re- I think I was so scared about what happened in like fourth and fifth grade and how that hurt me so much because they were so mean and the things that they said were so mean that I didn't want to tell anyone about my nonprofit when I created it,
Hmm.
except for like a few couple people who are again still my best friends to this day. And so I didn't, and I didn't tell anyone, and I felt like Peter Parker living this double life, which looking back, don't do that. Don't, you just want to be open, you want to be yourself.
Hmm.
Because I was trying to be normal at school. I was trying to, balance this advocacy life to where I would have to, skip school to go to Washington, D.C. What assignments can I make up? And then on top of that, I was sick as a dog. I was
Hmm.
pale. I would, sleep the entire time. When I got home from school, I would sleep. When I was on the plane, I would sleep. After every single conference, meeting, presentation, I would go home to the hotel room and I would sleep. So it was really, really hard. And I had like, Nicole said something like this. I had this like social battery, this like active battery, this activist battery, to where I was a very short amount of time to where I could, fake it till I make it, and I could do my presentations, and I could, talk about everything that I needed to do. And then I could feel myself, oh my gosh, like I'm about to pass out somewhere. And so my mom knew that very quickly. And so we had like little, bits of time, then we had a break, and then we had bits of time. And so we scheduled around that really, really great. But again, don't recommend it. It was so taxing on me and my body to, pretend all the time. And it was really, really difficult. When I got to high school, though, I thought I was going to do the same thing. And I thought that I was at an all girls Catholic high school. And this high school was actually incredible. And it built up such strong, incredible, confident women. And I was so impressed. And I went there, we had, this like retreat, and everyone was doing presentations about, what they were doing over the summer and kind of like who they were as a person, and for all the freshmen. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And then 5 minutes later, I was up giving my story. And, instead of that reaction in middle school to where everyone was like, ooh, like, that's different. That's weird. Why are you sharing? Everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, you're incredible. Like, what can I do to help? My friend has Lyme disease. I
Mm.
have Lyme disease. It was such a different reaction. And it made me realize that, I don't have to have like that secret identity of, doing all these activities and doing all this activism work. I can combine that. And that's what I've, done in college. And in college at UCLA, especially, everyone is incredible. I'm at the same playing field as the rest of my peers, and it is absolutely incredible because everyone's doing something amazing, and also everyone is so confident about that. So my biggest advice is, and I'm sure everyone says it, but genuinely be yourself, because when you're not, you can feel it on your health, and it hurts, and it hurts you so much more. I felt 10 times better telling people what was going on when they asked,
Yeah.
and compared to not, and hiding that and pretending that I was fine and I was normal. So again, that book, it talks about, how I went from that transition of trying to hide everything to, letting it all out and having such great feedback.
Very positive message. Yeah, we when people hide things, it eats at them. And one thing that we've done a lot of talking about over the last couple of years, of course, is the opportunity to be vulnerable and the opportunity to be authentic. And everyone has something. I mean, everyone has something. Most people don't have anything as dramatic as the people that we have on the Love Hope Lyme podcast, and what you've gone through and what Nicole has gone through. But everyone has something, and the longer you keep it in, the harder it is. So I want to talk before we wrap up. You also created some apps. So Tick Tracker. Talk about some of the apps that you've created. Why'd you create them? Where can people get them? And what's the whole purpose of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to say I was 13 years old, and I was at the Lake of the Ozarks again. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, why are you back? It's a very, dear family spot to us. So I've
Mm,
been going back, even like this summer, I'm going back. It's
mm,
very, very dear to my family and I, and we love the place. And, we don't blame it for what happened to me.
mm,
And, it could happen anywhere. It could happen in my backyard even. But we were there, and I had this dog named Mo, and we loved him to death. And Mo for Missouri, because we love the Ozarks.
mm.
Um, but we let him out to do his business, and we were going to watch a movie, and it was going to be great. And he came in and he was, scratching and itching. And I was like, huh, that's weird. And now that I, you know all about my own illness and all the bugs that can cause it, I'm gonna, get my little tick kit out. In fifth grade, we had like a science competition. I created a tick checking kit,
Mm.
which maybe alludes to how I created this app. But I got my tweezers and my magnifying glass out, and I was like, man, you have so many freckles on you. They weren't freckles, they were ticks. They were
Mm.
200 poppy seed ticks all up and
Oh,
down his legs. And we found this out at 11 o'clock at night. So next thing you know, I'm having, some probably like traumatic reactions to that. I like start bawling my eyes out because I think, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna get 12 diseases now. And my mom's freaking out because she's like, oh my gosh, like we let that dog in our bed, like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. So she takes those. So she takes herself to, whatever pet store, gets like the soap that you get to like wash off like fleas and ticks, comes back at midnight. I'm freaking out. Everyone's freaking out. Anyway, so the next day, which at that time, it wasn't probably the best time to ask her, but I asked her, I was like, is there any way to see, what ticks were on our dog? Since they were so tiny and, we can't really see them. Is there any way to, like, know if it was a Lone Star tick, if it was a brown dog tick? Is there any way to do that? And she was like, besides the CDC, like, no. And she was like, we got bigger fish to fry. Like,
Mm.
let's not worry about this now. So a couple days pass and I asked the question again and we do the research and there wasn't really a good way to see. And, the CDC maps, they were semi outdated. So it wasn't up to date. And I was like, what if we create an app that lets you track ticks in real time to where you can like tap on an icon and it can say, oh, found 5 miles from you was this tick. So the odds of it being, this tick are very high or something like that. And 8 months later, I had, help with developing the app from a company out in Ohio. They're all amazing, by the way, and they're some of my biggest supporters to this day. But yeah, Tick Tracker was born and it is global, multilingual, and free for everyone to use. It can help you track and report ticks in real time using geolocation. And we have data from the CDC, HHS, Smithsonian's, other museums, public and private companies, other scientists, citizen scientists, especially. And all of these other people, they use that app for, understanding, hey, I want to see, in 2018, where these specific ticks were. And then I want to see that in 2019. Oh, would you look at that? There's migration. So they can see migration, outbreaks, and even new tick species. Tick Tracker was one of the first apps to recognize the East Asian longhorn tick when it first came to the United States. And the CDC even reached out and was like, hey, are you guys getting this? And we said, yeah, we got it. And we got it earlier than you. And
Mm.
so a lot of, companies and organizations use that app, which is absolutely incredible. And it's one of my favorites. And we participated in the Opportunity Project, which is from the HHS.
Mm.
And it's basically a 14-week tech sprint where you talk about technology that is solving world problems, and Tick Tracker was invited. And Oracle was there, IBM was there, Microsoft was there, tons of like major companies with innovation and innovative tools was there. I was the only one without a degree. At the time, I hadn't even graduated middle school, so I really had nothing going for me in that, sense of academia. And I won. Tick Tracker won, and it beat out Oracle and IBM and all these incredible companies. And I think at first they were like, "Who brought their kid to work?"
Mm.
And next thing you know, I'm like doing my little presentation at the White House, and I'm saying, "Here's my app," and yeah, surprise, it's me. So that was really great. And, that's always been something that's kind of fun for me is, watching, I guess, the reaction of adults realize that, oh, I'm not an intern. I'm not someone's kid and I'm not a bystander. Like I'm the presenter. I'm the one who's actually, steering the ship. And I really, really think that, as something for, the audience to understand is like age does not matter in the sense of what you can accomplish. And so that's always just something to know. And then my next app, which I'll talk about very briefly since I know we have a short amount of time, but it's called the Long Haul Tracker. And I
Mm.
created this after, a lot of studies and research came out after COVID, noticing that, there were similarities between long COVID and chronic Lyme disease and how they were getting mixed up. People were getting diagnosed with one and not the other, and back and forth, back and forth. And so with the long haul tracker, you can track any range of symptoms from any illness at all. And you can share those findings with your healthcare provider and you can share with your friends and family through the simple click of a button. This helps you, you can track and report every single day. It has a notification saying, hey, 12 o'clock, uh, would you like to, track your symptoms? Would you like to give us an update on how you're feeling? You could do this every day, every week, every month, whatever you want to do. And it puts all of your data into a graph where you can actually see your progress. Because
Mm.
when I was extremely sick and someone was like, hey, last week, how are you feeling? I could say I was feeling not good. I couldn't tell you exactly what though. And someone was like, oh my gosh, you should really like track your symptoms, but they're all like journals and stuff. And, they're all like little itty bitty things that really you can't share with anyone else. And it's kind of hard to, swap back and forth. So I created this to make it easier to bridge that gap between, having a journal or something that you track on your phone and, being able to share it with, your healthcare providers and your friends and family. So like, for example, my mom, if I'm at college and, she's speaking to a doctor and we're on Zoom together, and let's say I don't have Wi-Fi, she can share my profile with them for on my behalf because I shared it with her. And, if you have, little kids, you can track their symptoms for them too. So it's just a very, universal and variety filled way to, track and report your symptoms and then make sure that those get out to the right people in, the format that you want it to, and to also see your progress. Because for me, having seen my progress and knowing if I'm getting better or worse, I think would have really helped me. And it's kind of like almost like a goal, and you see the ups and you see the downs, and maybe you notice a trend or something. Also, on the other hand, you can enroll yourself in studies that are happening. So the app will connect to you if you say that you have, celiac disease, and someone posted that they have a celiac disease study, and fit the description of, you know, age, gender, whatever, then it'll invite you to join that study as well. So the USC is actually using the long haul tracker for a 5-year plan study with COVID and it's with a NIH grant. And we actually just knew about that yesterday. So we are very, very excited about that.
This is very good. I mean, there's so much application to both of those apps. People that I've spoken to just write in journals. And we talked before about, we want to help doctors diagnose us. We did a show on gaslighting, and a lot of times we'll put down doctors because they say Lyme isn't here and all those kinds of things. But, if you could arm yourself with true information that's valid, I like the whole idea too about being able to, a lot of times people don't know when they were bit, right? Some people do. You don't really feel it when you get bit, but it's like, maybe they saw the tick and they took it off or whatever. Being able to track back when it happened, you could find a lot of information about that. Well, Olivia, man, this has been so great. You've done such amazing work and you're continuing to do amazing work. I know a lot of people have found inspiration from you. I appreciate you giving us the update on the LivLyme Foundation, on the apps, the book. It's just so remarkable how many lives you've been able to touch and how much clarity you've been able to help people understand with what they're going through. Because the whole Lyme disease world, it's a world of just not knowing. It's a world of confusion. It's a world of rejection. And the stuff that you're doing is providing more clarity for people to hopefully quickly get to diagnosis, right? And to quickly get to treatment, and then to quickly get everything else associated with the recovery of the disease happening. So I'm so happy to talk to you, and don't take this the wrong way, but I'm so proud of you for what you've been able to do. I do a podcast on sales where we talk about rejection all day long, and I'm going to post this in my sales world because here's a 12-year-old girl at the time who created things and is continuing to create things. We only have a short amount of time. Liv, give one final thought. Give one message. You've given a lot of amazing messages here, especially when we were talking about what it was like being in middle school, and then when you moved into high school, and how you realized that you made the shift from not talking about what you're going through to being more communicative to the people in your world. Give us something nice and crisp that you want to leave our audience with.
Well, for all of the audience members out there, whether you have a tick-borne illness or any chronic illness, whether you're a loved one of someone who has that, or whether you're even a scientist or researcher, have no idea what we've been talking about for the last hour or so. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I hope that everyone here, I really hope you have a takeaway, and just remember that people, they're going through all walks of life. And the most important thing is to have an open mind and an open heart, and to be extremely compassionate, because if you are compassionate, things will happen for you that will be incredible. And it might not be exactly what you expect. And, your path might divulge and diverge in different ways. And I really, really hope that, when you come across hardships, when you come across adversities, I really hope that, you talk about it, you be open about it. If you have a chronic illness out there, the worst thing that you can do is not talk about it, because all those people with tick-borne diseases who aren't talking about it, whether they don't want to or whether they have the inability to, unfortunately, that's a missed opportunity of indulging someone on your story and, providing them insight into what this disease is. And so I really, really encourage anyone, if you have any kind of illness and you know that it's something that really isn't talked about and it's not normalized in any way to have that illness, the best thing that you can do is, talk to people, and it helps you and it helps them, because they leave that conversation knowing something more, and you leave that conversation feeling amazing that someone had the time to hear you out and support you. Also, if, you are looking for any opportunity and, you really want to do something in life, don't think age can stop you, because it won't. And, you don't have to be with a PhD. You don't have to have, your whole life figured out to, do this, one specific thing that everyone else is doing. I mean, for example, again, I was 12 years old when I did these things, and a lot of people, said that you can't, but also a lot of people were like, wow, you totally can. So again, associate yourself with the right kind of people who are like, yes, you can do this. Yes, we will support you. And don't have any, I guess, like, don't hold yourself back. I mean, your worst enemy can be yourself. And so you really have to, let yourself experience these things. And, you really have to have those doors wide open. You got to ask people for advice. You want to ask them for collaborations. Again, the worst thing that they can say is say, no, thank you. Say, no, unfortunately, I will not help you. That's the worst thing you can do. And then the next thing you do is move on. So I think that, just really, you will be probably your worst enemy when it comes to, holding yourself back on something that you really, really, really want to do. And so you just have to, in the nicest way, get over basically yourself and, go out there and try at least. So the worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work, and then you pivot and you try again.
Absolutely. All right. Such beautiful messages. All right. Once again, I want to thank Olivia Goodreau for being on today's Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond.